Hello, welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari. This is a great big history podcast, world history from 1450 till almost yesterday. Our continuing series on basically philosophy in the 15, 16, 1700s is Life, the Universe, and Enlightenment. Ooh. Well, what is the Enlightenment? The Enlightenment was the application of science to societies and government. And it was done in support or opposition to absolutism, which is the idea that the concentration of all government and cultural power should be in one person, the king. Thus, absolute. Now, how absolute is absolute, and how is absolutism different than totalitarianism, which kind of had the same idea, but it's the idea that the king should run the country. That means run the government and the culture at the same time. The advantage of this is unity. The king's language becomes the official language. In England, it's called the King's English, the Queen's English. The laws are the same throughout the entire country. There's not all these different laws in all these different provinces. It's the same culture, same art forms, same architecture. It's efficiency. That you can go, I can get in my car and drive 4,000 miles. And everywhere I go, I can use the same money, the same credit cards. I know what the laws basically are. Heck, I can just stop at McDonald's every time. I know what the food is going to be. It's efficiency. The disadvantage is the king and his friends have all the power. And they can do what they want. And bad people can do bad things. Now, people will say, but what about good kings? What about good leaders? They could do good things. And that might be true. But then there's no protection against them saying something is good when really it's not. And there's no protection against bad people using that same argument because nobody thinks they're bad. Nobody thinks they're the baddies. So we're going to talk about three major philosophers in a span of roughly 100-ish years. And we start with Hobbes, the oldest of the three, and his book Leviathan. Now, what we're going to see is each of these philosophers are writing in reaction to something, and Hobbes is writing in reaction to the English Civil War. It is a trauma for him. The English Civil War killed about 2%, I think it is, of English people. But it also led to wars in Ireland and Scotland, devastating both of those countries. It created a military dictatorship. It cut the head off the king. We'll come back to that later. And it's just unceasingly violent. Towns are destroyed. Money is stolen and ripped up. It's just a destruction of social society. And the big quote, it's a big book, and yet one sentence comes out, is this idea about what life really is. And it's the idea that life is nasty, brutish, and short. That if you get rid of government, if you get rid of society, if you get rid of religion, that people are naturally violent and mean. And what's funny is, that's what most of my students think. Every time I ask in class, are people naturally nice or mean? When there's nothing making them, stopping them from being mean, or making them being nice. What do they choose to do? And most of my students will always say, mean. So, there you go. So Hobbes believed, and Hobbes is a conservative on this, that you needed a strong government to keep people from killing each other. You needed the strong to protect the weak. And you need the strong to protect the weak from other strong people. So you need a strong king to protect the people from other kings. You need a strong duke to protect the local people from a mean king. You need power invested in people above you. Children need a strong father. It goes all the way down. That government, no government is worse than bad government. And that is Iraq 2004 through 2008 in a nutshell. When we got rid of Saddam Hussein and couldn't really replace it with anything, not with an American government and not with a legitimate Iraqi government. And that is when the Civil War broke out. That's when Al-Qaeda became ISIS. That's when I had plenty of students who got blown up and are traumatized and are damaged, both mentally and physically, from their experiences. Iraq fell apart into a Hobbesian world. You have seen it happen. You've seen it a couple times, actually, in the Middle East. Iraq, and then Syria in the 2010s. ISIS in Iraq and Syria. You've seen Hobbesian worlds, and they're violent, and they're destructive, and they chew up people. And Hobbes is saying no government is worse than bad government. Was Saddam Hussein a good guy? No, he wasn't. But I've had Iraqi students, Iraqi refugee students, who, having survived the Civil War, told me and our class that Iraq was better with Saddam Hussein than with the Civil War, that Hobbes was right. And so you don't have a right to revolution. You don't have a right to really change your government. That government, yeah, it's bad, but you live through it. Because if you don't have government, if you don't have that order, chaos is worse than tyrannical order, is the way Hobbes thinks about it. Now, Locke is a generation later. He writes the second treatise on government. And he's going to sound really familiar because he is basically the author of the Declaration of Independence. Not literally, but like Jefferson would fail my class on plagiarism for just how much he stole from John Locke without citations. There's no citations. Look, I put up the Declaration of Independence. There are no footnotes saying John Locke's second treatise on government. So he would fail my class. But John Locke is reacting to the Glorious Revolution of 1688, when the people, quote unquote, of England had a bloodless coup against the king, James II. Basically, the elites, a bunch of elites, Protestant elites, basically said, "It's time for you to go, James." And James went. And so the idea, and then that government, there wasn't chaos, and that brought James's daughter, Mary, to the throne with her husband, the Duke of Orange, the King of the Netherlands, which is a bit of a problem. But they worked it out because to Locke, who witnessed this, who was actually a participant in it, people are good. People can make their own government. People can make their own decisions. People are awesome in the state of nature. Where Hobbes thought people are violent and mean, Locke thinks people are awesome. But there's a problem. We don't live in nature. We don't live in a world where we're alone. Yeah, I make the right decisions. Yes, I'm awesome. Yes, I know how to do everything correctly because I am wonderful. And everything I choose is wonderful. The problem is I don't live by myself. I live with neighbors. I live with family members. I have extended family members who are very close by. I work with people. And so I'm constantly having to deal with their awesomeness because everybody thinks they're awesome. Just like the Lego song tells us. Everything is awesome, according to John Locke. And so what that means is to live with others, I have to give up some of my awesomeness. I have to give up some of my rights. Now, I can drive 125 miles an hour. And I don't need to stop at stop signs or stoplights. They're not for me. I'm good. I'm not going to get into an accident. I am a wonderful person who can make the right choice. So why am I bound by them? Well, I'm bound by them the same reason I'm bound to not bring a machine gun to a Starbucks is because if I did that, if I drove 125 miles on the highway, if I blew through stoplights and stop signs, if I brought a machine gun, even though I am totally trustworthy, I know I'm trustworthy. You could ask me, Professor Gennari, are you trustworthy to bring a machine gun? I am going to always tell you yes. But other people think they're awesome too. Other people think they can drive 125 miles an hour. They could go through stop signs and stoplights. That they can bring a machine gun to Starbucks. And what if everybody did that? Well, that would be chaos. That would be disaster. And so to live in a society, which we all do, Locke says we have to give up some of those rights. You don't lose them. You're still awesome. But you can't bring a machine gun to Starbucks. Because if everyone brought a machine gun to Starbucks, that's dangerous. You have to not drive 125 miles an hour on the highway. Why? Because if everybody drove 125 miles on the highway, that would be dangerous. Because while you think you're great, everyone else who's not great thinks they're great too. And so it would be chaos. Now, you have to give up those rights. Who do you give up those rights to? Well, obviously, you give them up to government, right? Who gets to own the machine guns? The military is supposed to own the machine guns, i.e. the government, right? Who tells me I can't drive 125? The government, right? The law, right? And it's enforced by police and judges, right? There's a system, right? I give up those rights to government. Now, what if government is oppressive? What if it's tyrannical? What if it takes too many of those rights? Well, then I have the right to revolt. Locke, who came out of a glorious revolution, totally thinks you can revolt, but only if the government proves it can't be trusted, which is why the Declaration of Independence is a list of things. Everybody knows the preamble. Everyone knows the start, the first paragraph, right? When in the course of human events, it becomes time to break up, right? It's a breakup letter. It's the colonies of the United States, of what will become the United States, saying to England, saying to the King of England, it's not us, it's you. We're breaking up with you. But Jefferson also says, we owe you an explanation. We're British citizens. You're the British king. We're revolting against you. We're breaking up with you, but we can't ghost you. We do owe you an explanation for why we're breaking up with you. We've been together a long time, and so we're going to tell you why. And that's most of the Declaration is a list of things that the revolutionaries say the king is doing wrong. And over and over and over again, they say, we have tried to point this out to you. We have asked you to stop doing this. We have said this is bad. We have said we really don't like this. We have kept trying to fix our relationship. You won't listen. And that's Locke. Right down to the T. You have the right to revolt if you can prove government can't be trusted. That's what the Declaration of Independence is doing. It's saying you can't be trusted with our rights. We're going to have to make our own government. And it seemed to have worked, right? We have the United States. What about Rousseau? Well, the first two we talked about, Hobbes and Locke, are British, dealing with British trauma or British success. What about Rousseau, who is French? Well, his reaction is to French absolutism. He's got a problem with the French king. Why? Because the French king is way more powerful, way richer, way more organized, way more culturally important than a British king ever was. They didn't call Louis XIV the Sun King for nothing. He was the sun on which he shone on France, or on Europe, you would say. So his reaction is to being powerless. That even though he's an elite, he's powerless. Nothing he says matters. The people of France cannot direct France. The people of France cannot control their own futures in the government. The King of France does not have to listen to anyone. He has enough money to live on his own. He's got enough money to fund his own army. He doesn't really need to ask permission. And so Rousseau looks around and says, people are born free. That when you are born in the state of nature, you can do anything you want. You could be anything you want. But you live everywhere in chains. That civilization sucks and is ruining people. That people are awesome, but the rules of civilization weigh you down. You're hungry, but you have to buy food. You're walking by an apple orchard, but there's a fence, and that fence says it's mine, not yours. And if you take an apple from that apple orchard, you can be arrested. Right? This is Les Mis. This is, the musical, right? Jean Valjean serves 20 years for stealing a loaf of bread. Who made those rules? Dogs don't live by that. Dolphins don't live by that. No other creature on earth has rules that says, I have the food until you give me money. Even other primates don't have that. But we have civilization. And for Rousseau, that civilization is full of rules. You have a church telling you what you can or can't do and how to feel about it. Not only does it have rules, it's got morality. So it tells you how to feel and how to think about things, which limits how you can feel and think about things. Right? It's got a king. It's got laws. It's got a family. It's got grandparents who tell you, don't do that. Parents just don't understand, but can control your life. You see, Rousseau looks around and he sees rules limiting people everywhere. You just need to this is basically the standard operating procedure for women throughout most of history. You can't be, you can't be, you can't be, you can't be. Women are 3% of the population. And yet, how many generals are women? Right? Most of the generals of the United States, some 800 generals, almost all of them are men. Look at pictures. So, why? Who made that rule? Civilization. And so for Rousseau, There's the social contract, that people can rule themselves by what he called the general will, which was the common values that everyone agrees on. Think kindergarten rules, right? Clean up after yourself. Don't keep your hands to yourself. Don't punch somebody in the face. Like everyone goes, okay, yeah, all right. That's a limitation on you. But we all agree in the kindergarten not to steal someone else's lunch, right? That's the social contract. If you worked in a factory, if you worked in a business that had one refrigerator, right? And you put your bag in there, you put your lunchbox in there, right? And you label it generic. The social contract says, I won't steal yours and you won't steal mine. And you know what happens? People steal it. They break the social contract. And if you've worked in a place with a common refrigerator, I'm sure your lunch, especially if it was awesome, got stolen at some point. Now, there's a problem with the general will. And how do you have a general will of France? Like of millions of people? How do you have the social contract of millions of people? And so what Rousseau is really talking about is an extremely small, local, and democratic system. A town. A rural town. Right? Not even like Paris. Paris is too big. Because you have too much diversity. You have too many people with too many different ideas. Too many different cultures. Too many different languages. Right? How do you decide what the general will is? As one of the Supreme Court justices famously said about pornography during a censorship case in the 50s, I think it was I know it when I see it. When I see pornography, I go, that's pornography. The problem with that, and he understood this. He understood it. The Supreme Court justice it was not lost on him the next step that one man's pornography is another person's art. That one person may read Allen Ginsberg's Howl with its ode to homosexuality and think it's garbage. And somebody else will read it and think it's transformative. That it's the best piece of poetry written in 50 years. Right? So how do you decide the general will? And Rousseau, to the best of my knowledge, never really tells us. And what that tells us is it's hyper-local. It's very small. It's the commune. It's the family. It's a small town. Which is nice, but also a problem. Because how do you upscale this? Do you have a right to revolt? Heck yeah, you do. Against any non-democratic, non-humanist system. It is anti-capitalist. It is anti-patriarchal. Anything that is oppressive, that makes rules against you without your say, without your consent. Rousseau is the inventor of basically the inventor of consent. That things aren't legitimate unless you consent to them. So Rousseau becomes the favorite of communists, of the romantics, of libertarians, of any small group, any niche society that says, leave me the F alone. I can make my own choices. Trust me, I know what I am doing. The communes of the 60s that wanted just to get away from capitalism and their parents. The free love movement, again, of the 60s. But the Paris Commune of the 1870s. Communism in the 1840s. University students, like basically from the 1820s on, right? rich libertarians who want to live out in the mountains, and believe they don't have to engage with society anymore. All those people are tapping into Rousseau, which is people are awesome and it's civilization that sucks. This is actually the last book from Freud's last big book anyway, which is called Civilization and Its Discontents. The people who have to live in a society that drives them insane. Carrie Fisher had an autobiography called Postcards from the Edge. And it's like, I'm good, but the society is driving me insane, which is making me not good. I'd be good if everyone else just fixed their problems. And that is like the number one thing in therapy. That, especially in group therapy, you'll get lots of people in group therapy who say, I don't need to change. Everyone else needs to change. Well, that's tapping into Rousseau. And group therapy will tell you, dude, we're all here because life sucks. Like we none of us are adapting well. So we need to change. Because we can't get everyone in the universe to change. There's nowhere where you live alone in the state of nature. So that's Rousseau. Hyper-democratic, hyper-local, isolated. And so it becomes a favorite of utopian thinkers, of writers, who trust in themselves, who say, I can make a better society than this. So those are our three major philosophers. They're all bound by events in their lives, and that's what they're reacting to, and they give us an idea of what people are like, what they think people are like when they're outside of civilization. The problem is you can't test that. So the Enlightenment is not scientific. It's the attempt to take science and apply it to people. The problem is people basically aren't scientific. They're a mess. They're human. They're humanist. And you can try to study them, but there's so much variation between one person to the other that you can't have a control group. You can't ever know when it comes to people. So be safe, be cool, be awesome, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.